Thanks for having me. Thanks, Jeremy, for asking me. Grateful to be here, man. I haven't been to a DAA meeting in quite a while. Yes, we used to have one waited on the old Smile Faith near Ace when I first got sober, and it's refreshing, man. It's a great thing. You know, we get to. I told Jeremy before the meeting, I go, I can't wait to talk about drugs here today. You know, it was just exciting because, you know, I got sober in AA. I know a lot about DAA. I know they use the book. You know, got some great speakers that come here, man. It's really a blessing. It's really a true blessing to be a part, or even just to be here to talk about this, man. And I know we're on step 10. And Jeremy gave me a brief opening of what to do and what not to do. And so I'll read a little bit and then I guess I'll share, correct? Something like that? Read a little bit and then share?
You can tell your deal for 10 minutes to clarify too.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
Yeah.
I see. No, So, me and my buddy were talking right here. I grew up in Oklahoma, so I'm obviously a Thunder fan. But anybody from Oklahoma here originally? Really? See?
Ponca City. Maybe I'm an alcoholic.
Ponca City?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
I lived there till I was 12, and then I was raised in Kansas City. So I moved
Okay.
down here a few years ago.
There's usually when I ask, there's never anybody from
I
Oklahoma.
just exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you've been to some of these meetings and you've been to speaker meetings or anything like that, you know, most of us, I didn't know this until I got into recovery, but most of us grew up feeling a little different, right? And I always related to that. I never felt like I was a part of, or I always wanted what somebody had, or I had a lot of anxiety, right? I know somebody was talking about anxiety before the meeting. I go, that's just part of being an alcoholic or a drug addict, man. It's just something that we have to deal with, you know, and that's something that step 10 will actually teach us how to deal with some of those things as it crops up. But I didn't know I was an alcoholic until I got to Florida. I spent a lot of time in Oklahoma drinking, drugging. At the end, it was all drugs for me. You know, I was back in the days where I used to smoke Oxycontin, you know, and you could smoke pills back then before, you know, the old OPs, right? It feels refreshing to talk about that here, doesn't it? And, man, it started off, you know, I dropped out of school, my dad died, and I could have told you for sure that I was a drug addict because of my dad, his death. I was real close to my dad. He passed away in 1995 and from cancer, and I was only 11. So, I mean, obviously that has an impact on somebody's life, and but it doesn't make you a drug addict, you know. It doesn't, you know, because when I got here to recovery, and we read in this book that once I take one drug, once I take whatever, I'm usually off to the races, man. That's just what makes me. I started off drinking. You know, a lot of us get progressively worse. The book talks about progression, where, you know, a lot of us may start out drinking, you know, or whatever, smoking weed or taking Valiums. That was me, man. I was going to school. I wanted to drop out of school. I thought it was different. I never wanted to talk to any girls. Had a lot of anxiety. And once you started taking freaking pills and, you know, Valiums and drinking, that was the solution, man. You know what I mean? He read there's a solution. That's our solution now. But back in the day, the solution was taking pills and stuff like that. Now, I wasn't smoking crack and doing all that crazy stuff from that day. You know, I was only like maybe 20 or something. Or, well, I dropped out when I was 16 probably. But progressively worse, man. It was always the case. I never felt like I fit in, but when I started drinking, doing those things, I felt fine, man. I felt like I could work. I was always a functioning drug addict, you know. I was more or less always on Suboxone for probably 6 years, you know. I was on subs. you know. And then once you're on subs, you can't get loaded on anything. You can't get no more opiate, really. So I was, you know, you start doing other things, you know. So, but we moved to Florida 2011, and my mom came to Florida, and I followed her here, and then I went back to Oklahoma. And if you're a drug addict like me, you always call your parents, right? We take our family through the ringers. It's what we do, you know, whether or not we see it or not. I never, not one time when I was getting loaded did I ever think what my mom is worried about. You know, is she worried about me living or dying? Not one time, man. I would call her up and make insane excuses like I need my car fixed, or my car's, you know, I was learning about cars. I was like, my CV joints went out in my car. Can you send me some money? And then I'd go buy freaking Oxycontins and meth, you know? And that's what I did until I was running from the repo man, you know, at the end of my days in Oklahoma City. And I ran from the repo man maybe six months. And they're aggressive, you know. The repo man, he don't mess around, you know what I mean? So I would park my car. I had a 98 Camry. I just loved it. It's a classic unit, you know, quality, right? You know? And I'd park it at some other dude's house, you know, or I'd park it in the garage or whatever, you know. And he'd see me. He goes, pull over on that car. I'm like, you'll never fucking catch me alive. Oh, sorry. I know the reading. I seen the reading in there. It says not to cuss. Excuse me. But there was, and then one day, right after I was after a long run, right, and I took some Valiums or some Restorils or whatever the case may be, and I fell asleep, and my car was gone, right, and. You know, that was all I had. In Oklahoma, they were paying unemployment. They were paying $500 a week. You know, so there was no reason to freaking have a job. You know, I was just going nuts. You know, so we used to write fake scripts. We were doing all sorts of crazy stuff. I was scared that I was going to get arrested probably for 5 years. You know, just complete fear that I would be indicted on some federal charges. You know, and. All good alcoholics, drug addicts, what do we do when we're in trouble? We call our family and tell them the same bullshit that they probably already know anyway. But I said, Mom, I'm a drug addict. You know, I didn't actually say it was an alcoholic. I said, Mom, I'm a drug addict. I need help. You know, and she got my car out of the impound. We came to Florida, and I thought, man, I'm gonna have a fresh start. You know, I'm not gonna do this same shit anymore. I'm not gonna go nuts and use drugs anymore. I thought it was just a phase. I thought maybe I could snap out of it and somehow become a successful member of society, go back to school or whatever. When I got here, you know, I was a month sober and I was detoxing bad, you know, bad. And just like the book says, man, it's a peculiar mental twist, right? I tell myself that I'm really not going to do this again. I really mean it. I have that passion to say I'm going to do something. I really feel it in my soul. But this is step one in a sense, you know, out in the street, that doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean anything because I had Loratabs, sitting in the pharmacy that were from Oklahoma. You had a refill. You can refill them from Oklahoma. You know, I'm like, hey, you guys got the Norcos up here? You know, and they filled it. They filled them, and I was off to the races. I popped 10 of those, man. And then in Florida, the police don't mess around. I got arrested many times in rapid succession. You know, and went to a couple halfway houses. Got out. Mom didn't know what to do with me, you know. Nobody knew what to do. And one of the key moments in my sobriety is when I called up my mom from jail, or key moments in the seeds to sobriety is when my mom said, "You can't come home anymore." You know, I called the phone, And, you know, I tell her some bullshit like they're going to rape me or these people are, you know, some dumb stuff in jail, you know. And I say, they're coming to get me. And maybe this meeting isn't as uncensored as I wanted it to be. But, yeah, so, but I called my mom up, man, and told her a bunch of BS, and she said, you can't come home anymore. And I somewhat knew that the gig was up. But when I get to halfway houses, man, and I get to treatment centers, just like I mentioned before, I feel a part of, because I have people around me that were doing the same thing generally. That's all we ever wanted as kids, is to feel a part of. I want to feel a part of. And when I was in, even though I was miserable, I would say, I don't want to be here. I want, you know, I was still having a good time in a treatment place or a halfway house and not changing anything about my mind, right? I would come to AA meetings or whatever meetings, and it would just be Charlie Brown Christmas. You know, I wouldn't care to hear anything about what they said. And I'd get out and do the same things over and over again. And, you know, one of the traditions states that it's attraction rather than promotion, right? One of our traditions. And I think that's one of the most powerful things in all of recovery, is that I was attracted to what somebody was doing in the program, right? I knew that they did drugs like me. I knew that they were trying to recreate their lives through this program, and that was attractive to me. And I didn't stay sober that first time, but that seed was planted. And it's funny because I speak on step 10 tonight, and the first time that I got sober, I spent 6 months in jail, 6 months in a halfway house, and 1 month on the street. That's generally my story, man. You know, that's usually, I can't live a free life generally, you know. I just can't make it in society. The first thing I get out of when I get out, and I'm sure some of y'all can relate, I want to get my phone, I want to get my car back, and I want to talk to the girl. You know, I want that stuff to work out. I want to get back to what I was doing. I want to talk to my co-defendant. You know, I want. These are the things. You know, I got arrested with my girlfriend. She was my co-defendant, and I remember talking to the halfway house manager. I'm like, "That's my girlfriend, man." You know, like it's like, no, you have a no contact order. You can go back to jail. I'm like, oh, okay. But I was detoxing from Xanax real bad. If you're taking a lot of Xanax, you can detox, hallucinating for months in jail, you know, in J-Wing. Yeah, I thought it was under the jail. I didn't know if I murdered somebody or if it was possession of cocaine. And thank God it was possession. I didn't kill anybody. But when I got to the halfway house, man, the guy was talking about, you know, Eric, and he was talking about how he wanted to lay his head on the pillow and sleep at night, and how he wanted to make things right with his mom. And if you're an alcoholic or drug addict like me, one of your character defects or your personality traits that you'll continue to work on step 10 is that you'll like what somebody says, but you'll think they're an idiot in the same sentence, right? You'll think, you know, that guy really says something good, but I just don't like him, right? And that's part of alcoholism, because that's what we are. Drug addiction. That's what we've always done, man. You know, we grew up not knowing what to do. We've suppressed our emotions and all of our things for all of our faculties for so long that I remember talking to my sponsor saying, when am I going to get better? When am I going to feel better? When am I going to start making better decisions or not thinking about girls or the trap house again? When he goes, Jeff, you spent 15 years loaded. What do you think you're not gonna get completely better? And that's what this program, this step 10 is. And my sponsor, and I'll lead right into it, is as soon as I, you know, as soon as I get into recovery and I start doing this deal and I start working the steps, my sponsor told me to read 84 through 88. And that's what I did, man. And that I was only serious from recovery after I picked up a white chip. Got drunk. I was working at Ocean Honda as a car detailer, and I took a drink of Hennessy, and I had already went through the steps. Made amends, everything, but I wasn't willing to do step 10, 11, and 12. I wasn't willing to be in a home group. I wasn't willing to be amongst my fellows, right? I didn't want to be in the middle of the boat, right? You hear about in AA or wherever you go, that you want to be, they tell you to be in the middle of the boat or right up in there in the crowd. And that was something, because I isolated most of my life. It was only my mom and me, and I watched my dad deteriorate for so long, which I only learned through step work later on, that has a big impact on a lot of my sobriety and how I do things today. And so step 10, I picked up that white chip. My sponsor told me, you need to start chairing meetings. You need to start doing the things that you're not wanting to do, and I started chairing meetings. I started sponsoring people, even though I didn't think I knew anything. I started doing those things, man. I started praying, started meditating, trying to meditate, and I would read this. And so on 84, in the middle of the paragraph, it says, this is after you've done amends and stuff, and this is, these are the things we have to do daily, right? This step 10 is meant for basically in the moment, right? It's to keep us present in the moment. And these defects that come up from 6 and 7, if you know your defects and you know what you struggle with, and you only learn that through step work, they're going to come right up here in step 10. Generally, they might have some twists of different flavors and whatnot, but it generally boils down to fear. So this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and we continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance is our code. So in the big book, that's the bread and butter of step 10, is that when these things crop up, and they will, best know they will, they're going to crop up, and you have your directions. You continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, right? By the time you get to step 10, we're supposed to be sober, right? So when you get here, you look and you see that most of the problems now you're going to have are with your thinking and with people. That's generally the entire deal, or with some institution or whatever. Resentments. You're going to have sexual problems, with your relationships and stuff like that. But when these things come up, right, we gotta turn our thoughts to somebody with help. I gotta tell on myself. If I don't know what the problem is, right, it might not need to be removed in step 10. You might have to go back and take a look. In my experience, I might have to go back and take some more inventory and find out exactly what the problem is. Because that's, for me, the root is the foundational problem. I need to go all the way back and find out exactly where it stems from. Now, when it crops up again, if I've seen the defect and I believe it and I know exactly what it is, it can be removed right here in the moment, because you see it has no fear, it has no bearing over your life. You know what I mean? Because there's no, all the history, all the light has been shed on your history. You know what I mean? And that's from childhood and drinking and everything else. It's not just your drinking career. We go all the way back into childhood, out of my experience. So, and then, love and tolerance is others are code. We cannot be acting like idiots anymore. We're not going to be perfect, right? But so by the time we get here, it says, we will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we will recoil from it as from a hot flame. There's no thought about drinking anymore. Now, I can't tell you exactly when that deal is removed. You know, maybe it gets removed in step 1. Maybe it's step 3 when you pray with your sponsor. Maybe it's step 4 and 5. You know, everybody's walk is different, and that's what makes recovery so awesome, is that you have so many different experiences here and so many different people to help you throughout your thing, that it's an amazing thing, man. You have so many people's walks of life are so different, and yet here we are, you know what I mean, in a meeting, and, you know, we got somebody from Oklahoma, I know a lot of you are from treatment centers. I've been there. I know how it is, you know, and so part of step 10 too, we talk about self-restraint. Sometimes in the moment when you're freshly sober, you want to say things or do things that are not in good character, we'll just say, you know what I mean? And I've had many times where I've said some dumb stuff, and I'd had to go back and make amends immediately, you know what I mean? Or I've had to figure out exactly why I was thinking that way, you know, exactly what was the problem in my life at that time, right? So it's easy to let up on our spiritual program on 85. It's easy to let up on our spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do. For alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are the thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. And I only get directed by my sponsor generally into what I'm doing day to day, because when I first came in, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to have a relationship. I didn't know. I was scared of my wife I was scared of my wife for probably 2 years. I'm like, should I be in this relationship? Should I not? All sorts of fear and all this stuff crops up from all your past stuff. All that stuff got removed from me. And what else but that is God's grace, right? Because my default is to destroy my life, right? My default is always going to go back. And if you're recovered, right? He said recovered, and that means we're just recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body right now, you know what I mean? And that's all we have is right now, you know? And so when these things crop up, the first thing really to do is turn right to God, man. You know what I mean? There's been many times in my sobriety where I've done many, many fifth steps, and I've just called, what's the problem? What's the problem? And I never really, truly relied upon God. I didn't spend the time with God. I didn't wholeheartedly say, what is this? God, please remove this from me. There was times where I had a pattern. I would write down certain things and do those things, but I never truly did the heart thing. You know what I mean? It wasn't in the heart. It was just emotions. It was all performance, right? And this is not what that is, man. You have to truly give yourself to God, and He will remove it. Now, it takes us a long time to get there. You know what I mean? I'm no saint. There's other issues in my life where I probably haven't given to God, and there's issues that I have, right? And that's what step 10 is about, is that I'm going to find other areas, because when you're sober and you're living this life, and then we go to meetings and we do this thing, and we talk to newcomers, we sponsor people, that's what we do. That's what we do. That is the exciting part of it. You know what I mean? Is that we get to watch the defects get removed from us and other people, and and just watch for this stuff, man, as you go along. Never wait. You know, my sponsor would be, man, you got a problem? Call right away. You know what I mean? You might not want to talk to somebody, you know, you might want to talk to just one person about certain things about yourself. And that's okay. You know what I mean? You can talk to one person about your other defects and another person about another defects. You know what I mean? But the book says you need to be transparent 100%, no matter what you do, you know, about everything. And a lot of times, I didn't even know if I was honest in the beginning. I was only as honest as I could be at the time. You know what I mean? And as I went through, I realized, you know, this is the layers of the onion. You know, we're just continuing to peel it back. More of God's grace gets revealed. You realize what's going on in your life. You realize what you're doing currently. You know, you could be doing, well, I think it says somewhere in the other book where it says these troubles can last indefinitely, right? These defects or this current behavior that we're doing in sobriety can last indefinitely if you want it to, you know. And it's our job to get with the certain people, get with your sponsors, and try and get this shit resolved, man. Because once that's all laid out on the table and you're clear on all this stuff, that's when God's light comes in, man. And you feel fine about it. There's nothing to worry about, you know. And that may be a fleeting moment, trust me, you know. But that's all we need is a sufficient fleeting moment of God's grace to come in,
Exactly.
say, I'm blessed, I'm doing good, man, I'm blessed. And then, you know, something happens, my wife, the dog shit on the floor or whatever, you know, and then I have to, you know, and then something happens, you know, and it's an ongoing battle, man. I've had to make amends in sobriety 10 years down the road, you know what I mean, for things that I've done, and have to switch up my entire program, you know, and that's okay today, you know what I mean? I know what to do today, and it's all because of this program, people like you. I'm happy to be here, and thanks for letting me be here.